All right, everybody. Kyle Bailey here with a sales tip on phone sales and how you can get better at sales today. My goal is to give you tips that I can get to you in 5 to 7 minutes. I always say 5-minute sales tips, but it never seems to stay at that level because we're all sales guys, so we like to talk. Talking about phone sales today. So we talked before about door-to-door. Phone sales is very similar. You have an interruption model where it's pure interruption. So the way I distinguish that is you have pure interruption where there's no way that person knows that you're calling. Then you have maybe intermediate interruption, you might call it, where you've sent an email, they're vaguely aware of you, you have some maybe billboards or some awareness in the community, and so that person can like have name awareness. That way when you show up at the door, there's some, okay, yeah, I know who you are. You do windows and doors, you do plumbing, you do air conditioning, you do pest control. Phone sales, you can use that, but you don't have that visual cue. So the uniform, the lettering, the monogram, the logo, you're not going to have any of that with phone sales. So it's a pure interruption model, even if they know the name, because you've still got to kind of climb that hill of name recognition verbally. So when we've talked before about the sales process, greeting, rapport building, investigation, presentation, demonstration, and close, that greeting and rapport building are going to happen just like that. So it's really important, just like door to door, you want to use a really firm script. Don't change your script every 3 or 4 calls. You want to run 100 conversations before you make any major changes. Now, I don't mean that you write something down and then go for it. The way you'll want to do that is you'll want to hammer out a script. Get somebody who knows what they're doing to vet you, talk to a few people, say, bounce it off of them, get their opinion on it, people you trust that'll give you good objective feedback, and then deploy your script. And you really want to run it 100 times before you make any major changes. So I'll give you a good example of what starts to happen. Once you've run a script a lot, like over 100 conversations, really that's the mark. What starts to happen is the execution of that script, the saying of those lines, kind of retreats to the back of your brain as far as what you're actively managing. And you begin to be able to say that script without even thinking about it. And what your thoughts go to is mannerisms and tone and hints about like where that person sits. Like you ask a question, a yes or no question, and the person sighs, or they just give a really long pause where they'll say, that's a really good question. That tells you so much, and you have to be able to listen for that. And you can't do that if you're changing your script all the time. So if you use one script and talk to 15 or 20 people, then you change it. Now your brain is having to manage that new tick, that new idea. Also, once you kind of paradoxically, once you master that script, you run it 100 times, now you know that so well. If you make a small change, that small change is easier to manage. So the biggest thing with phone sales is hammer that script. Get it down. Make sure it's good. Don't be, that kind of goes into function of the script. So I'll save that. But so first, hammer that script. You've got to repeat it 100 times before you know what you've got. Now, there's things to avoid. Don't say, how are you doing? Don't use just common phrases. Don't talk about the weather. What I like is getting straight to the point, because what I want to communicate right off the bat is I'm not going to waste your time. I'm also not going to waste my time. My time is also important, Mr. Prospect. So, hey, I'm Kyle Bailey. I'm with ABC Pest Control. We sent out some mailers a week or so ago. Does that ring a bell? Silence. This again goes back to the concept of many closes. There are many little closes throughout your process. And what you want to do is you want to ask those questions and shut up. Ask and shut up. Does that ring a bell? You are not going to say another word until he does, or she does, obviously. We sent out those mailers a couple weeks ago with that special promotion that we had for your neighborhood. Does that ring a bell at all? Oh, okay. A little bit of disappointment. Oh, okay. Well, listen, John, in that case, I'll go ahead and just tell you what we're doing. It takes about 45 seconds, and then if you like it, we can talk more. Does that sound fair? I will tell you this. I developed that script with using something that somebody else had already kind of started, but I tweak that and I use that in all my phone work now. I make sure I'm in a position where I've either emailed them, they've received some kind of mailer, we've been running Facebook ads, some kind of reason they should have heard from us already, and then I deploy that script. Now, generally on the phone, if you're cold, then what you're really selling is the appointment. You're not selling whatever your product or service is. So I'm going to bridge that into the next video in the actual phone appointment. And for now, we're just going to stick with that first layer, because it's so important. Because generally speaking, in phone sales or remote sales, what you really have is two functions. You have the SDR function, which is a sales development rep, or BDR, business development rep, and that person is selling the appointment. Then you have the second function, which is actually the service. And you kind of have two divisions in that. You have the one call close function, and then you have the multiple call close function. And I won't get too deep into those because the one call close, I'll talk a little bit about. The multiple has too many variances in it, because variables are different versions of it. Because, you know, if you're selling a SaaS product, that's one thing. If you're selling, you know, manufacturing a tool, you know, that's going to be something else. And generally it all revolves around demonstration. And I'll talk a little bit about that, probably make a video standalone about that, because there are different functions in there we could talk about. But generally, I really have a heart for my SDRs and my BDRs, because I've been there, and it's a grind. That is a life where the grind is the life and the life is the grind. You got to be able to embrace that. And it's all about that script. Do not get in a world where you're varying your script all the time. You've got to marry that script, and hopefully you've got management that after you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 conversations, not dials, conversations, this is where you're bouncing it off of a human and you can hear their responses. I should have made that clear earlier. But it's not just dials where you're leaving a voicemail. This is humans. So 1, 2, 3, 400 conversations, you should be able to go to your management and say, hey, listen, when I did this, I noticed this difference. I'd like to keep using this. I was blessed to have good management. They would hear me, and sometimes they would say no, but most of the time they would go with what I was saying. Part of it is I've had a lot of experience, but also I made sure that I bought into their philosophy. So maybe I'll make a video about that too, because that's really important. I think a lot of times with BDR, you get bitter. It's easy to do that because it's a tough life, and you respond either by learning how to have tough skin and slough things off, or you start to take things internally and you use bitterness to justify why you're not being successful. So mentality's a lot, and I'll make a video about that too. But phone sales, there's a magic to it, there's an art to it, but it is tough. It's really tough. So yeah, how you can get better at sales today. We talked about staying on script, pounding that script until you know it so well that it becomes kind of part of you. So it's a function that's running in your brain kind of as a separate motor, separate from your active brain. Your active brain's actually listening and responding to the customer's nonverbals. And that's a lot over the phone, but we'll get into that a little bit more in the next video. So happy selling.